Hi guys, welcome to EPL Reviews. I'm gonna have to change the name of this channel because today it is Tuesday night football. It's Champions League football, the round of 16. One potentially huge game over here where we have PSG versus Real Madrid in one game at the Parc and then the second game that I'll cover today will be Sporting Lisbon against Manchester City, which we may be in for an upset for. So I'll analyze both of these games, which players are likely to be key and where I think the result is going to go. No better team to start off with than the team that has 13 Champions League titles, the team that has the most Champions League titles across history, Real Madrid. And they've had a pretty good run in the Champions League so far. A relatively easier group they had, and they've went 6 games, 5 wins and only 1 loss, and that one shock loss coming against Sheriff Tiraspol early at the Champions League, just when the group stage was kicking off. But they've absolutely beaten everyone else from there, and they look to be in very good form. They scored around 14 goals as well, so more than 2 goals a game. But granted, it was an easier group. They had Sheriffs, then Shakhtar and one other team, but no major other clubs in that group. Whereas if you look at PSG, the group that they got out of, they had Manchester City, they had Leipzig, and they also had Club Brugge, which also produced an upset in that group. So PSG and Real Madrid, two massive clubs. Both clubs that, realistically, when we talk about who's going to go the distance, who's going to win the Champions League, there are a few clubs that are going to come to your mind: Manchester City, PSG, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. I feel like these 4 are going to be the top 4 clubs that are, really going for that Champions League. Real Madrid find themselves at this point of the season top of La Liga, right? And what you need to take into account is that they've just come across a 0-0 draw to Villarreal. That wasn't a great game, slightly underwhelming for the Spanish side, but they also did crash out of the Copa del Rey to Athletic Bilbao 1-0 a few days ago. But I think, leave alone those 2 results, Real Madrid have had a splendid season in the Spanish division, and they translated that form almost word for word into their Champions League campaign so far. In that group stage where they scored 14 goals, they only conceded 3 goals in 6 games. So their defense is also pretty sorted. And now I'll move on to talking about some of the key players from Real Madrid that we need to watch for. Number 1 for me would be Casimiro. And the reason I talk about Casimiro is because he's very underrated. I don't feel like people give him the appreciation that Casimiro deserves, what he brings to that Real Madrid side, in terms of moving up and down the pitch, getting the most tackles in. He has a very physical game. He's not your typical Brazilian player. That said, he is a holding midfielder. He does control the game well. He links with the defense well, plays some good forward passes, and mostly whenever Real Madrid play, you can see that they take up the bulk of the possession in the middle third of the pitch, and that is down to Casemiro. But the thing about Casemiro that he might need to watch out for is his physicality itself, because on the pitch he can be a very rough player, but he needs to make sure that he doesn't get booked going forward in the competition, because as we all know, these are the knockout stages, right? So 1 or 2 yellow cards can end you up in trouble. If he manages to not get carded, if he manages to continue, then he'll stay in that Real Madrid midfield trio of him, Kroos and Modric, and they could do amazing things. They could take them all the way, but he has to keep his discipline intact, which has been a factor recently. Vinicius Jr., we all kind of wrote him off at the end of last season where he wasn't doing enough. People were comparing, obviously when you're playing at Real Madrid at that age, just like how Ansu Fati at Barcelona, you're going to be lauded. There are going to be sky high expectations from you. And it just felt like for a moment Vinicius wasn't reaching them. But this season, he's in blazing hot form right now. 17 goal assists in 20 games, and he's just lighting up that Real Madrid, attack. And when he's in form, I think regardless of the venue, you wouldn't bet against Real Madrid getting a goal, getting 2 goals. Because when this guy's in form, he makes the right runs, he's very clinical, and he even has an eye to put the right ball into the box as well. So I feel like Vinicius is a great asset, and this player in particular will greatly enhance Real Madrid's chances of getting the win against PSG at the Parc des Princes. Karim Benzema too is arguably, Real Madrid's best player right now on form. If you look at it, 21 games, 24 goals and assists. More than a goal assist per game. That is an insane ratio that I don't think any other player in La Liga has, numbers quite comparable to his. But Karim Benzema will also be very important in that front 3. I believe that they might go with Asensio or Rodrigo on the left, Vinicius on the right and Benzema up front. And depending on who's fit. But there has been talk about whether Benzema will be available for this game, in which case he's not, then they might have to bring in somebody like a Gareth Bale, who can also step up during these knockout phases. So we'll definitely see Karim Benzema, if he's in form, he's going to get a goal. He's going to get a goal against PSG, and he's going to expose that back line, make a good run. I'm going to call it a header. Now you talk about Paris Saint-Germain, who also had a very similar, story to Real Madrid in terms of their Champions League campaign. 6 games. They've also scored 13 goals. So, their attack is set. We all know that. Paris Saint-Germain, Messi, Mbappe, Neymar, all incredibly talented players. Maybe their defense might be a little worrying because they have conceded a few goals in this Champions League campaign so far. And another factor contributing to that may be that they're not tested as much in the domestic division. If you look at Real Madrid, they're playing in the La Liga. They have a lot more competitive teams to play against. Liga is kind of becoming a one-horse race. PSG has always been at the forefront. Lille did surprise everyone with that title win last season, but I feel like PSG don't get tested enough in Liga, and maybe that's why the players aren't as accustomed to, playing against high quality sides week in, week out. So when they get into Champions League, they may get shook off. That being said, they do have Marquinhos, who's in great form. They have Achraf Hakimi, who's one of the key players for PSG right now. Especially, he had amazing form at the AFCON. He was scoring free kick after free kick, coming back to defend also. His pace has been a threat forever. I think he played more in a right mid role for that Moroccan side, but he'll definitely do bits for them this game. One last point that I will talk about is the question that everyone's, sort of saying is that, is Messi's contribution at PSG being underappreciated? Well, to be honest, if you look at his stats, he's played, around 14 games. He's only got 2 goals, but he has had 7 assists. So he does bring in that playmaking to the team. What I will say first and foremost is if this was any other 34 or 35-year-old, he's 34 right now, people wouldn't be judging him as harshly as they are judging with Messi. But that's what happens when you've had such a great career. But I don't think it's time to, write him off or say that he's not contributing enough to PSG. I feel like he's playing in a system that he's not used to, perhaps, the way he played there at Barca. Maybe there have been talks all the time about how a few ego issues were coming in between Messi, Neymar and Mbappe, how that front three might take time to gel together. But I feel like with time, that's all going to work out. And I feel like Messi hasn't done that bad of a job so far. The second game that I will be talking about is Manchester City versus Sporting Clube de Portugal. So when you talk about Manchester City, on form, probably the best team in the world right now, because there has been a lot of talk that, for the longest time, Premier League has been the most competitive league. They produced most of the semi-finalists last season, the Champions League before that, and they've translated that into their Champions League campaign as well so far. In fact, in the 6 games, they've scored 18 goals overall. That's 3 goals a game, but they have looked a little vulnerable in the defensive department, where they've also conceded 10 goals in those 6 games. They did lose 2 games. So the first of which they lost to PSG, who we talked about, and the second loss, which I don't know if you can really count, they lost 2-1 to Leipzig, but that was after they had secured qualification. So I'm not really going to count that as too much of a huge factor for City going into this game. All that we know is they've been unbeaten for N games in the Premier League so far, and they'll probably carry that on into this game as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this can turn out into a 3-0, 4-0 win for them. For the prediction, I'm going to go for a Real Madrid 1, PSG 1 stalemate. Key players to look for in Manchester City's side. One is definitely going to be Bernardo Silva, who is absolutely on top of his game right now. Not just in form in terms of his playmaking ability, he's providing a lot of assists to the team. But when I went on Who Scored and I checked the stats for Manchester City, he's also up there in terms of tackles won for the team as well. So maybe that's one aspect of the game that isn't acknowledged as much. But Bernardo Silva is contributing defensively as well to Manchester City, as if he wasn't enough as an offensive midfielder. So Bernardo Silva there. Rodri, the out-and-out defensive midfielder for Manchester City, one of the most underrated players at City. He has insane amount of tackles per game, makes a lot of interceptions. His work rate is insanely high, moves up and down the pitch every single game, week in, week out. And he even scored that goal against Arsenal, shirt off celebration in front of the Arsenal fans, giving them a lot of stick. That's when he came into the limelight this season. But Rodri has been consistent throughout the season, and I feel like he'll definitely show up in the Champions League as well, especially against a Sporting Clube de Portugal side. They don't have a lot of star names, so Manchester City's expertise is probably likely to prevail in that midfield department for them. So to talk about Sporting Clube de Portugal, they are second currently in the Liga NOS, which is obviously the first division in Portugal, second behind Porto, who they just recently had a game against, a 2-2 game, but that was, the football aspect of that was probably overshadowed by the aftermatch violence and a lot of physical aspects that happened on the pitch during that game. And that sort of sums up Sporting's season so far. They've been a very good side, but I feel like they've had a lot of bookings. Maybe it's a thing that's to do with the Portuguese division. I'm not too, I don't really watch many of their games a lot. I don't really focus on the Liga NOS a lot itself. But they've had a lot of bookings, and that's what I realized when I first went through their stats for this season. But that being said, they are underdogs. They will be looking to cause an upset against City, and they have a few forward players as well who could get the job done for them. And I'll talk about the first player that I'll talk about is Pablo Sarabia. Pablo Sarabia, who's been loaned down from PSG into the Sporting side, and he's got 12 goal assists in 17 games, which is a good record. And Nuno Santos as well, not the old one, the new one, the new Nuno Santos. I don't think he's appreciated as much in that Sporting Clube de Portugal side, because in 14 games, he's got 5 goals and 5 assists. You might think that's, an average record. But the fact is that he's got all those contributions coming off 7 times from the bench. So definitely a player to watch out for in this encounter. And finally, my prediction for the Sporting Manchester City game, I'm going to go for Sporting 1, City 3. Sporting may produce a goal with their attacking, but I feel like City have too much experience for them to, lose out this game to Sporting. And City, in fact, they're on the highest run of away wins. I think they've got 4 away wins consecutively in the Champions League, and if they manage to get this away win, then this will be the first time that City have 5 away consecutive Champions League wins. And the last time in the last time in Europe where Sporting and Manchester City faced each other, that was, interestingly enough, in the Europa League round of 16 in the season of 2012. And in that case, that was a 3-3 draw on aggregate, and Sporting went through to the next round. So, if anyone's going to play the card for Sporting, it's got to be history or luck or a bit of both. Anyways, we'll see what happens on the pitch.